Woo! Let me see. Oh, we are live, folks. We are live. Thank you. Thank you. Let me go ahead and welcome our lovely host. Oh, thank you for that. Okay, so that just makes me so happy. Okay, so let's get our lovely host, handsome host, up in here. Let's get Lubna up in here. There we go. There we go. Okay. Fantastic. So we have 4 minutes. I don't know if you want to, get to know your ladies real quick. I'm gonna just connect the Give on Live page with this new link. So off to you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Look, ladies, let's not be shy. Come on, girls.
Talking to myself. Is it live still? Could you check, because I had to close it. I was hearing myself. This is where I want to be.
Yeah, it's live and I have host.
Yeah, this is
Island girls. We got a spaceman.
This is in Haiti.
It is. Yeah, I knew that. You told me.
I told you.
You
I'm just
told
letting
me.
Ashton know.
Whoa. Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
Let them all know. Let them all know.
Actually, a year ago this time. That was in June last year.
Oh, that's
year.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost time to go back.
Can we go anywhere?
Yeah, soon, hopefully.
Oh, come on, please. Until AstraZeneca makes what's it called, guinea pig of all of us.
Hello, beautiful.
Lubna, you there? Woo! Wow, look at that background. Gorgeous.
Is that Brighton?
You bet. Mm-hmm. Although if I show you now, you think it's you would think the lockdown was just a movie we watched.
There's all these people outside.
Super busy. Mm-hmm. There's lots of people. Sailboat.
Until they again.
Hmm? Hello.
Okay, we have 2 minutes, guys. So yeah, get to know Ashton. He's so cool.
Well, hi, Ashton. Tell us all about Ashton. Amazing Ashton.
Hi. Hi, Lubna.
I'm excited to have you.
Yeah,
hosting.
well, I'm excited to host. I'm actually an interview host on YouTube on the channel Crypto Coin Show. So I do interviews. I've done about 500 interviews on my channel in the last 6 years or so, mainly around blockchain startups and investors. And I also have a blockchain event ticketing company called Event Chain. That's similar to Eventbrite, but puts all the tickets on the blockchain and allows you to pay with cryptocurrency as well. So sort of dipping my toes in all the different little sectors of blockchain, and doing the interviews, I've seen blockchain integrated into almost every industry I've done on my channel. So get a good grasp of, all the possibilities. And I'm excited to hear a little bit about, blockchain on your guys' side, but also just on the general startup economy. And, being in startups is so exciting for me. I can barely even sleep.
So what has been your favorite interview so far?
Well, there's a lot of
memorable. There's memorable, and then there's favorite.
For sure. I think well, one of the most memorable ones was the John McAfee interview that I did.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, and he was just a crazy man. So he was hiding out somewhere. It seemed like he was somewhere in India or something like that, and he was just going off. Every time I asked a question, he would just go off about like crazy things for like 10 minutes. I was like, oh, I'll just take it.
I saw him in Malta when they did the Malta in 2018. That was a surreal. That was right before the final crash.
Yeah, I saw that his talk, and he was just like so like sounded like, because he has a low like tone of voice, so it's like it seems really serious and like it's always like scary. He's like telling you how it is. He's like, this is how it's gonna be.
And it kind of brings me to one of the startups, the crypto startup that I had hope was actually going to do what it said it was going to do, which was Intimate.io. Because when he was on Malta, he talked about using coins, and his wife was on stage, right stage, and he was talking about using that for prostitution and blah blah blah. He's kind of off the rocker. And then there was actually Intimate.io, which was basically doing sex toys, and the revenue was supposed to then be used to work at providing identity for sex workers in the Philippines, to help them be able to identify the Johns and protect themselves that way.
Wow.
But it went bust.
Yeah.
Why did it go bust? Why did it go bust?
I think the people who were running it were not really. See,
corrupt.
I think I don't know if it's corrupt. What happened is that the industry created this false positive, where you raised money and you spent money keeping the coin up, and you never had enough money because you were trying to keep the coin up.
Yeah.
You never had enough money to actually start building stuff.
Yeah.
So you were kind of hoping that you could sell enough to the coin to take out. And I think the fundamental issue is that, you can build a big pot in Ethereum or Bitcoin, and then good luck trying to take it out into cash.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's the case with a lot of companies that, go public. They go public too early, or they're trying to focus all their capital, and it's almost like running two companies, right? You're trying to keep the stock price up, but then the operations of the company, unless you have an established enough company, you're sacrificing one for the other.
Exactly.
And all the companies on the crypto space, the companies that have tokens, generally the coins that are pumping is just like marketing hype, and they don't really have the fundamentals because they can only focus on one of the two things. And the coins that have the best operations fundamentals, but they don't have necessarily the best marketing or the business aspect of it, they're more tech oriented, they're focused on actually building great products. People don't, the people that are doing all their research, they see the value in that, but a lot of people don't want to go that deep into doing research, so they just look for the easy way, this quick easy pump. So it's ironic and unfortunate on how that sort of plays out.
But that's why also I think that the new way of doing it, where you have a stable coin, which means you're not really subject to any exchanges. And even then, I think it's a false positive, because you're basing your token on a currency on which, when you're doing it on a dollar, you're now going from decentralized to centralized, where you also have no influence whatsoever on what can happen. So to me, you might as well go to fiat and deal with the fiat issue. Yeah,
it's a great point. And I think I'm really interested to see how the stablecoin part plays out, in 5 years from now, how predominant they are in the industry. And some say that it's really going to be beneficial overall to the industry, but there's still kinks to work out, I think. And especially with the top stablecoin Tether, there's been backlash and maybe not set up 100% correctly.
Hey guys, sorry to interrupt, but can we, finish your conversation, finish your thought. Can we look to reintroduce the show at 1:05 in 1 minute? But finish your thought. Okay.
No, so the one you should look at, Ashton, I don't know if you know, is Cello.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to contact them.
If you want to, what do you mean you're trying to contact them? Why did you talk to me? I'll get you to the CEO.
I know. I in theory, I know everyone, but I don't always just come. I know your mama bear. You're the general. You're the only person that can say shut up to me, and I actually shut up.
She was going on the other day, and I'm like,
I was being emotional. Okay, I think we're just missing Lillian, but I think she's gonna pop in. So, if we can, Ashton, I want to give you 2 minutes, and then just go ahead and start. Would be great.
Sounds great.
Okay.
You put some lipstick on.
Of course, I gotta be ready.
I'm a natural beauty.
Yeah. I believe in enhancements. Okay.
You got to set
Nothing.
yourself up, especially with this more working from home. You really have to replicate like if you were going to work. You can't just
Yeah,
live
I
in your
just wore
pajamas all
pants.
day.
I wore pants.
That's awesome. All right. Well, I think
But
that
we all got to watch the beaches behind us, and he's out of space.
yes. Well, I'm really excited for the space launch that's coming up here. This is going to be a historic event.
Ooh.
Is that SpaceX?
Yes, SpaceX, NASA combined.
Okay.
All right. Well, are we live, Christiana?
Yes, we are certainly live, and take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Ashton Addison. I'll be the host today of DIGECON Live. Thank you to Christiana for organizing this. Thank you, Genevieve, Lubna. We'll be getting some other panelists coming in very shortly. Today, there is a bunch of exciting topics, so much to talk about since the craziness in the economies sort of put everybody in turmoil for the last 3 or 4 months now. But for some, it's a chance to take a step forward, because with change comes adaptation, and with adaptation comes room for growth. If you can be the first to take advantage of the changing economy and put yourself ahead. So I think there's going to be a lot of great discussion going on surrounding how, especially for startups, to survive in the new digital economy and to thrive, and what pivots need to be made in your organization and personally in order to take advantage of the situation. So Genevieve, Lubna, thank you guys for coming on time. I'm really excited to talk to you, and Christiana as well. And I think if we could kick it off, we're going to start with startups, because really a lot of people that are looking to grow their businesses, they're starting from scratch, and they need guidance. And a lot of the people in this group have already been through many startups and can speak from personal experiences. So I guess we could kick it off with a 1-sentence, 2-sentence answer of, how have you been personally affected by the lockdown, and what is your number one tip for how to pivot and survive in a startup scenario moving into this new economy? Genevieve, if you could kick it off with an intro.
So first of all, Geneviève, sorry, we should have told you before.
No problem. Thank you so much.
That's okay. No, so actually, in terms of, I'm actually going through the whole concept of pivoting at this point. We're not doing a full pivot. I'm actually calling it, I have an oven, and I've taken my my primary, moved it to the back cooker, and now I'm cooking something new. What we have realized is that there was an opportunity to look on how would you really address the supply chain, because what we've been doing with AgriLedger is we have been addressing the supply chain of food, which is very easy for all of us to understand, because obviously we all have to eat. And my mission has been to really empower smallholder farmers by getting them access to market and to financial services. And I think that's where the blockchain comes in very well, because it does allow for individuals to be able to really participate from afar. And that is what has been great. If you think about it, we're now able to sell the good that belonged to a Haitian farmer, which lives in the middle of the mountains, and he receives his money electronically. And that's one of the things the blockchain does. So we took a look at one of the challenges that has been a challenge forever. If we look at the drug business, counterfeit drugs cost about 200 billion a year in financial. That's not even counting the human element. And as we're moving to this COVID aspect of looking to have drugs or tests which are being administered, how do we look at removing counterfeit? So it's working with the suppliers all the way to the customers and maintaining chain of custody, which is something which is important in the blockchain. So it was from basically sitting at home and realizing that there was an opportunity. And that's the key in terms of with startup, you should be looking all the time and saying, what is it possible? And this is only a small part of our offering currently, but we were able to uplift it and be nimble and use our knowledge to basically address it to different parts of the economy.
Awesome. Okay. And it looks like Lillian has just joined as well. Welcome, Lillian. I'm going to drag you right into the conversation, jump right in. Thank you, Geneviève, for that. And we'll get back to the food supply and the drug supply, because the supply chain for blockchain is probably one of the most important industries that will change, and it will affect so many different industries. Lillian, we were just talking about the future of the new digital economy. How do we pivot and survive, especially for startups? So Lillian, how's your lockdown going, and what tips do you have for startups to pivot and survive?
Absolutely. Well, I just want to thank you so much, Ashton and Christiana, especially, for really making this event become a reality, as well as everybody else here right now on the panel. Yeah, we are shifting to a whole different economy right now. As a startup, any of the assumptions that you had prior to COVID-19, right, we're thinking, this is how my business is going to move. This is what the business model is going to be, etc. I mean, we can no longer assume. We can no longer make assumptions, and we really, it's like you really have to go back to the drawing board as far as from a startup is concerned. Really, really ask your audience, what is it that they want right now? A lot of businesses, as we've seen within the past 1 to 2 months, have completely shifted. Many businesses were already prepared for the challenges ahead, and they're seeing amazing growth. But I just think that everyone right now is going to the drawing board. What we do, I am the founder and CEO of Flown in 5, providing one-on-one online education on demand, allowing people to get instructors anytime, anywhere. And so for a lot of startups, businesses that had some kind of digital or online component, guys, this is prime time for those kinds of businesses. And so it's a scary time to be in, but there's immense opportunity. So it is a new economy we're in. And now for a lot of people before, they're saying, oh, look at this thing online. What are you doing online? What's this hype about online this and online that? Now, stakeholders, investors, people are taking online, the online whole business and digital economy way more seriously than before. So it's a double-edged sword. It's a challenge, but it's also, there's immense opportunity.
I exactly agree, Lillian. And I was just saying that before you stepped in about how some might think that the traditional stance would be to take a step back and wait for it all to play out and be conservative on your funds and your strategy. But at the same time, I think those innovators and adapters really see this as an opportunity to take another big step forward and seize the opportunity. And I've heard other entrepreneurs say, never let a crisis go to waste, because with changes come opportunities to seize those new scenarios. So that's really interesting. And I like what you said about asking the audience. I think that one of the major points of startups is having the proper product market fit, right? And if the market changes their opinions ever so slightly, you need to also change the product. And if you're building a product that's a solution in search of a problem, then you probably have a problem, right? You really need to determine with this new market, what is the problem? And then the solution that we're bringing, is this going to be perfectly catered for this right time to this right audience right now? So I think that's great insight. Lubna, let's throw it to you. I'd love to hear a little bit about how your lockdown's going. Hopefully you're doing well. And what are your tips to pivot and survive in the new digital economy?
Woohoo! Well, I thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me here, and I'm so excited to be here and to see all of you. I have to say I've been very fortunate in that I took this time to look inwardly. I was in flight to Brussels when the meetings that I was going to at the commission were all canceled. And I came to London for something else. So that didn't happen. And it was actually it was the Ukraine week. And then I came here, and another week later, and the lockdown happens, and I moved myself from central London to Brighton Beach. So I am, immensely grateful to be able to wake up in the morning to the sound of the waves. It's a time for, whether on a personal level or in a business, it's a total reset. It's a very influential time. It's the most powerful time in human history. In fact, I feel. I don't think we have. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've ever had a time where all humans, regardless of race, gender, class, education, or what have you, be talking, regardless of language, about the same thing, being in the same conversation. And it was and it's not just on a personal level, but the economy as well. So for the duration, as long as we've been under, it's long enough to develop new habits and to set new, to establish new mindsets and at scale. So what we were able to, the change and what we've adopted in the last 7 weeks, it could have taken us another 7 years. So from a startup perspective, any of the things that you have had as assumptions or givens, I think I would first of all take another look at them and reassess, because the environment that you're within has changed. Also, I hope that no startup is doing anything that isn't socially inclined. So. I know that we can. This is our time to, especially the crypto community. This is our time to take the world to a new kind of an economy where value is what it's at the heart, and not imaginary empty promises of currency, whether it's crypto today or fiat. It's on the promise of either a technology or a business. So we can reset that now.
Yeah, well.
Technology or a government, I meant to say, sorry.
Well, it looks like we have Erica in here as well. Welcome, Erica.
Hi.
Hi. So to all our panelists, we are streaming on YouTube right now. Kristiana has posted the link to all of the YouTube viewers. Welcome to the party. If you could take a minute to share out the YouTube link to your socials, that would be great. Erica, it's in the chat room. Erica, thanks so much for joining. We were just talking about entering the new digital economy. How has your lockdown been? And specifically for startups, how do you pivot and survive and thrive in the new digital economy? So if you could give a quick, two-liner on what do you think are the top tips for startups to be able to thrive right now? Go.
I think number one, obviously online presence. Right now, there are people who are just bored at home. They have nothing to do. So you really got to try to target your online audience there. And then I would say self-reflection is actually probably number one. Sometimes, and I know this with myself, you get so caught up in like the day-to-day pushing forward that you really need to take a time to sit back and strategize. So those are probably the top two things that I would recommend to startups is take advantage of this time by moving things online, and then just make sure that, you have your lists on what needs to be accomplished and your goals set.
That's great. And Geneviève, let's go back to you. I know you were talking about the supply chain and how it will be integrated. And, I don't think people realize the scope of how large and it will influence everybody's lives, because the supply chain really affects everybody. Can you give a glimpse into, what does the future look like? And what kind of time frame do you see this being implemented? And will people notice on the front end that, you know, all of these improvements have been made and that blockchain potentially is running all of this on the very bottom level?
So I think that success will, in my viewpoint, will mean that people don't realize that it has happened. Because if we continue to talk about the technology, we actually slow down the process. I like to say, do I ask you how email works? Or do you ask me how email works? We just know that it works. At the beginning, you know, it was one of the best conference webinars I got to hear the other day was with, I think Ken, I'll get the name, but he was the guy who started Active Directory with Microsoft. And he talked about how at the beginning, you couldn't get email across different out of your company. So you couldn't send outside. Nowadays, it's something that's very easy. It's so Active Directory has allowed that integration to happen. And that's really what's going to be needed in the blockchain is the interoperability, one, between the chains, and then two, no longer talking about the fact that it's crypto. It's talking about that it's trusted, it's secured, it's assured, the assurance piece. And that's the key thing with supply chain and why this is so great for supply chain. And it worked, you know, we don't think about it completely, but it worked well on the supply chain of money, of providing what I owe you and that whole P2P. So if now we take those concepts, we start looking at the issue of that we saw at the beginning when people were hoarding things. Well, we hoard when we're scared that we're not going to have enough. We think we're not going to be able to feed ourselves and our family. We're not going to be able to get enough paper. And then also we then think about the other issues that became key with the supply chain, where food, mostly in the US, because it was no longer directed to restaurants and school, the farmers started throwing it out. But that doesn't mean that the people who are eating those things still don't need that quantity of food. And being able to understand and to be nimble with the supply chain by understanding where the needs are is what's going to be key. It's not only, but however, I want to say it's not only a blockchain play, it is several technology in there. The blockchain is the infrastructure which allows for that quote unquote trust, but then you need to be able to understand what is the data saying to you. Mm-hmm. And obviously the other thing which is key, which has come in, you know, I've been working actually in digital identity for years now. And I remember this whole thing about signatures, you know, you need to sign things. And the banks are now scrambling because no one can be at the bank. You need to have a document signed. How do you know that the person in? Does it really make sense for me to take a copy of my passport, a picture of my passport, and send to you? Is that really matching who I am? So digital identity, data management, blockchain, AI, machine learning, it's really what's going to come in. And I think this, to me, this is something I have been talking about. Pandemics are a great folder for innovation. And innovation is not usually something new. It's making things that already exist work well together and figuring how to do those hooks in there.
Great insight. Christiana, I want to highlight you because, you know, you've put this really all together. If you could, you know, I'd love to hear your take on this. You know, we just sort of passed over you and you're really the backbone of this. So let me throw it to you and, you know, let's hear your input and whatever else you have to say.
Sure. Thank you so much, Ashton. I really appreciate being here. I appreciate you. So yeah, just how I've experienced my quarantine and what I think of startups pivoting, right? So I think, and I understand what Genevieve is saying, my career now is about being this big, you know, digital transformist or whatever they call me nowadays. But the reality is that it's not for at least in times of crisis, and I experienced this personally when I was train is coming. Welcome to the train. Okay, staying by a train station just in case I have to run away. Just kidding. So what I wanted to say was basically, I appreciate emerging technologies. That's my industry, right? However, I like to just keep things simple in times of crisis. So how can we organize, and how can we meet the needs, the most pressing needs first? So there's a company called Everlywell out in Austin, Texas. Now they were producing something completely different, and then they pivoted to produce emergency testing kits, right? So they could potentially be at a loss of $1 million, money that they were using to go to market. They could potentially be out of that because they decided to pivot for the needs of real people, right? And not everyone can do that, but what I think is important is to analyze what your business does and see how you can fit into the context of an emergency and try to make that happen. I think that's most important. And yes, I believe in advancement. I believe in disruption, but I do think that the first step is to get low to the ground, understand the pains of those you're solving for.
That's a great point, Christiana. And I think it's very important to, as a startup, especially, that when you're running and when you have, only a certain amount of capital, and depending on how recently you raised and, what the situation is for your type of industry, it can definitely be harder to raise capital when you are, a startup that's in, the entertainment industry or a luxury industry, and all of a sudden you're in a pandemic where everyone's thinking very conservative, and you have limited capital, and you think, okay, how are we going to survive? How are we going to pivot quickly to ensure that the capital that we have goes to good use? And will we get an ROI? If we have a brewery and all of a sudden we're going to start making hand sanitizer, how much does that cost to start that little side project? How long is it going to last for? And, will we come out on top? And will we be able to get back on track? Is this a permanent change in the industry for our startup, or is this a temporary change? And, is this going to change the future of our company, or is this just an opportunity that we're looking to seize and then get back on track? And I saw a lot of companies do that, making masks, making hand sanitizer, all this, interesting side projects. So I'd really be interested to see, was that an for them, is that going to benefit their business in the medium term? Or is it something that they're really taking a bit of a hit financially? They're already taking a hit financially, but to in an altruistic way, help out the economy and do what's right, and spend some capital in the areas that allow you to help other people get through tough times.
I think that's a great point, Ashton. And I do think, don't pivot for the world while you kill yourself. I don't think that's appropriate either.
Mm-hmm.
I do think, if I'm correct, Everlywell, they're related with testing. Their original product is involved with, they're not just randomly doing something completely different. For example, pizza. Erica was on the show. We talked about pizza, and she had a great description of I forget what it was, but you can explain it later. But pizza, for example, I'm not saying, make hamburgers now. There's a great chef in Jersey City, I believe he is, or no, I think it's Atlantic City, amazing family, 20-year restaurant. And now he's doing kits. So people come, pick up their dough and their sauce, and they go home and they cook with their kids. And then he was live. He was given love over live stream, and he was sharing, okay, guys, now you have the kit. Here you go. This is how you can cook with your kids. And people were buying those up. Maybe the first few weeks of lockdown, his restaurant gave away meals. But then he's got to think about how to maintain his business. He's making these kits, fun, what to do at home. So he understands his customer. He understands their needs. They're bored, they're at home, and he pivoted for that, but he's still making pizza. Right.
Yeah. Well, what's super interesting is that, with these pivots becomes the introduction for a lot of companies and startups to more innovative technology that allows them to either connect remotely, new creation tools, new potential business models and ways of looking at things, or just companies taking a step back and being like, if we build our technology using, future technologies, will really be future proofed in case something crazy like this happens again. And that's, I think, where, blockchain has a great potential for a lot of industries, with startups that originally, didn't think, they think, oh, blockchain's just way in the future. We're in the present. I've had this in my industry as well. A lot of companies say blockchain is the future. We'll look at it, later. But now that this crazy economic shift has happened, they're saying, well, maybe we could implement blockchain, start implementing it right now, and we can reap those benefits, because now's the time for change and might as well experiment with new things. And I guess that leads me to asking Erica, because you're part of the blockchain center, very focused around all different types of industries that are looking to implement blockchain. Could you talk a little bit about how's the blockchain center being affected by the pandemic, and are you seeing startups throughout Miami that are looking at a new interest in blockchain technology?
So it's a little hard for us because at the Blockchain Center, we have an in-person location where we'll host like community events. A lot of it is focused around teaching people about digital currencies right now. And because of the pandemic, we've had to close our doors. Really, really sucks, actually. So I'm not even in Washington. I'm sorry, I'm not even in Miami right now. I'm actually in Seattle because we can't even open. Now, I think that people are looking at blockchain as a solution for things kind of like supply chain. I don't really, and then obviously in the payment side of things, right now what's happening with the government is that this $1,200 doesn't come from nowhere. It's money that's being printed by the Federal Reserve, and that kind of is interesting because that really makes a case for Bitcoin and what it can do for a hyperinflated money. Also, what's happening right now with the banks is that if you know what fractional reserve lending is, which is something that all banks practice, which they're only required to hold 10% of the money that you have on deposit actually in the bank. As of March 26th, because of COVID, banks are now required to hold 0%. So a lot of people are worried that, what happened in Greece, what happened in all these countries that have fallen due to economic problems. What happens is the banks, they limit your deposits. They limit your withdrawals. And so now that they're not required to hold any money on reserve, people are very worried about that. So what's happening is I'm having more interest now than in a while of people that are like, okay, how do I buy Bitcoin? There's more and more like wealth millionaires, like infamous traders who are like, wow, I'm looking at Bitcoin because it has a limited supply. I mean, I have gold people who are just traditionally gold bugs now all asking me like, how can I get into Bitcoin? It's just really interesting because when you look at a place where you want to save your wealth, when people are worried, they don't just store up, food, they also store up safe havens for their money, which has traditionally been gold, but now we have Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is actually the best performing asset this year. So it's really cool, but at the same time, because it's like Bitcoin was made for times like these when people need an exit from their traditional finance system.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it's a little bit nervous because you don't really want people to be worried.
Definitely, yeah. There's been a new interest in Bitcoin, and what's interesting is that with your blockchain center, although it's you have an in-person venue, but have you obviously been affected by it being closed by the pandemic, and so for you guys personally pivoting, have you been able to recuperate some of the traction or bring things online to to make a pivot and start thriving?
Yeah, I mean, our community is really strong, and they're all like, we do have like a huge chat room for all of us. But what's been really good right now is we're kind of focusing on our online content, our live streams. We have content coming out almost every day. On Monday, we have Crypto Mondays, which is an in-person event that we normally do, but now it's moved into virtual reality, and we've partnered with Bits and Tokens for that. And then on Tuesdays, we do something called Trading Tuesdays, where we just teach people how to read charts and Bitcoin price predictions. And then on Wednesdays, we have Developer Wednesdays. So I'll have one of my devs come on and just teach people. Like I think last time he taught people just how to build a smart contract, super easy. And then we have like political Thursdays because a lot of people just in the crypto space in general are very interested in the economics and the politics behind things. And then on Fridays, normally we have an in-person VR game night. But now we have like virtual VR game night. So everybody kind of just joins up in VR. But it's cool to see, I didn't really know all of these like multi-streaming platforms existed. But now because of coronavirus, we've just had to learn things, and it's working out really well. I feel like our online audience and our reach has grown a lot.
Oh, that's great. And Lillian, I want to throw it to you because your business seems like it could still do very well online. But what's interesting about you is that it's not really directly related to Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. And I'm curious on your take of, with all this economic turmoil, have you personally become interested in this technology and the currencies?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're absolutely right. So, it's funny because on my business and education, one-on-one on-demand lessons on your own schedule, anytime, anywhere, helping people learn languages and other things, job training skills, it's not related per se. But what I have found in this startup environment, years even before the pandemic, is people have been using cryptocurrency and initial coin offerings to raise capital for their businesses when other options of creative financing or venture capital funding were not there. And I'm actually learning about like the whole world of blockchain and cryptocurrency, things that I just didn't know about. I actually read about, I don't even know if they still do this, but there's an entrepreneur, I think her name is Chrissy McFarlane. She actually did an ICO. She did an initial coin offering back in 2017. Chrissy, I think it was. Well, anyway, the name of her business is called Patient Tory. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but I'm trying to.
I haven't heard of that.
Yeah,
I've heard of it.
This is Chrissy McFarlane. I'm just gonna give a shout out to her. I actually purchased her book on Amazon. She writes about how she is the founder and CEO of Patient Tory, kind of a play on words of inventory. So the word patient, it's a health-focused business. I don't know too much about it, but she actually raised like $7 million through cryptocurrency after she had gone through, tries to raise money through venture capital, et cetera. So what I will say, Ashton, is, we are very much more interconnected than we realize. I think there's an immense opportunity in the blockchain cryptocurrency industry that I'm interested in learning more about. But it's just fascinating. I mean, she was not on the cover of New York Times, not on, Business Week, Fortune. You probably haven't even heard about her, like you said, but this is somebody who raised $7 million in 2017 through your industry, through the services that you guys make available. And she became her own bank through it. So, but yeah, in regards to my business, online education, I think what's happening now, guys, is a lot of people are taking it more seriously. Hey, online services, online products, everything that you can do that can service the millions of not just K through 12 students, but just in general. I mean, this is just a lot of these tech companies that provide services online, the valuation of these companies have just increased, you know what I mean, through this pandemic. So I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful for the future. But I hope that made sense. There's a lot there.
Yeah, definitely. And it's so exciting that these opportunities are possible, and people that I'm sure Chrissy knew a little bit about the blockchain infrastructure, but you really a lot of people they see, oh, somebody's able to seize an opportunity in these new kinds of business models to raise capital, and it is possible. And I think,
absolutely.
and there was I think 2017 and 2018, there was like more capital raised through tokens than there was like in traditional VC almost. It was going parabolic. And I think,
Yeah.
exploring that new business model, there was a really big hype around it. And now I've seen that it is, it is tougher. You can't just put out a piece of paper and expect people to throw money at you, because there's more due diligence now.
Yes, Ashton. And why would they? It's like putting on a thong, like, expecting people to throw cash at you. You better have a nice body, baby. You know what I mean? I just like, not everyone can strip it down and get tips. I'm just saying, okay? Not everyone is. You can also rap while she's doing it. And now, she ain't about that. She's about the money, getting the money. But it's just, I'm glad gone are the days that you can raise money with a piece of paper, but I think the sad part is that now you've put all this strain and probably, fear in these investors who could finally use a cool technology to be an investor, not having to be accredited. And then we messed it up,
Sorry, I was going to say, is it though? I think that how is that you can instead of the financial rewards rather than, because the day money don't flow, it's information that flows, and that's the beauty of the blockchain. It's about information flow, information that you can trust. And so if I can trust that information to be what it says it can be, it is cryptography, it is timestamp, all those things then allow me to make decisions as to how to move. Then money flows. That's how a bank moves money. It's you owe money, you pay for it, and then there is a transaction behind it. We just started it wrong. And the problem why we started it wrong, in my point of view, is the best use case was the Bitcoin. But there are many other use cases. When I actually found out about this 5 years ago, I was like, wow, straight through processing. That's what we can get. So it's straight through processing, P2P, identity, security, all those things become possible. We get caught up into the technologies in ways we shouldn't. Let's look at the process. What is broken and how do we make it used for that? And so the other thing is also, we need to bring it to the people. We keep keeping it in those towers, and we keep talking about the financial. You know what? I'm against, in ways, trying to teach people just about the Bitcoin. I want to teach them about what that technology is going to do. So in the Haiti contest, what we're doing is we're allowing a farmer to continue to own his own assets further down the line and be assured, because he can demonstrate that he will be paid. Those are the pieces that we need to start being able to do, to then we can move it. And guess what? I'm not using smartphone with them. SMS works. You just send them an SMS. M-Pesa has shown that somebody in the middle of the, I actually did a transaction in the middle of Bushman. So let's not recreate the wheel or think that everybody needs to have a smartphone in order to be able to function. And then once they have that currency, they have money in their pocket, it is then their choice how they want to invest in what I believe clearly is the Bitcoin is very much like gold. I want to invest in this asset. I have enough money, and I have enough money to not care if I lose that money. And that's the key to investment.
Yeah,
Christiana.
I love parts of that. I do love how you are applying the technology to a real need, and getting the farmers making the mangoes paid and getting that beautiful, luscious, delicious mango into my belly. I love that, and it's ethical and it's smart. The only thing, and I would love for Erica to put her opinion too, is I'm gonna say this, to be rash, but I don't believe in education in this context. I believe in showing people what the technology does. They don't need to know ERC20 token, or they don't need to know that. They need to see and feel and examples, clear examples on it working and it adding value to them. It doesn't matter how it's built.
Exactly. No, I actually do think, though, however, I'm going to stop you there. It does matter how it's built, because what's happening is that's another thing. There is no standards being used. So we need to get to standards, because a lot of people, to me, you have to be clear, what are you doing? Because hashing is not blockchain. Hashing is taking a picture of an event and putting it onto a blockchain. It's signing something to say, at this time, this is what has happened. And I agree, for a long time, if you don't have the ability, like to so the Bitcoin blockchain and the Ethereum blockchain do not have the ability to take that much data given. So that's why you're moving to these system whereby it is less distributed in that it's cloud-based. So that makes a difference if you're looking at a private blockchain, but private to write and open public to read. So these are things that we need to get. This is why I said education is necessary, not education to the person who's receiving the benefits of it.
Great. Exactly. Perfect. That's what I mean. Good. Love it. All right. Erica, what about you?
Just on my first comment is on the 2017 raising of money. I think it really did kind of give a really bad, a lot of people did make money, and I can't tell you how many people came up to me asking me to be on their boards, and they would compensate me in tokens and blah, blah, blah. And, but it really did give a bad name for the industries. ICOs are actually kind of illegal now in the United States. And anybody that did one should probably, look over their shoulder a little bit, because the SEC, if they feel up to it, might be after them depending on how they did their raise. But really, those people definitely capitalized on being able to raise money outside of securities regulations. And I had nothing to sell at that time, but I just know a lot of people who are in big trouble because of it. And then the second thing is just on education. For us, what's important is to teach people about Austrian economics, right? So a lot of the things that I said just earlier in my last response, people don't know. They don't understand that one of the big reasons why we have such an inequality is because the government prints money and they're not allowed to. We used to be pegged to gold and now we're not. And those things, that the fact that happened, it's just, it is the number one reason why we have wealth inequality, is because there is more money being printed and certain people get to touch their hands with it first. So that's kind of why Bitcoin is important to me. Now, in terms of Ethereum and use cases for blockchain technology, I'm glad that you're using open public blockchains. I think that, if what you're using it for is a method that is enclosed within a system and you don't have value, it's more for just record keeping, then absolutely use a private blockchain, as long as it's not more expensive than just using some database. But the first aspect of this is the invention of Bitcoin, because it's needed, right? Inventions are made because things are needed. There's a need that needs to be filled. And then from Bitcoin came all of these other blockchains. Everything's a copy of Bitcoin, but they changed some things. So I think that for me, what's more important is just that, just the education on the economic side of things, because you really can't expect millennials to continue to try to operate in a system that's kind of screwing us.
I agree, Erica. And I do want to take the opportunity right now to ask the attendees in the audience on Zoom and on YouTube and the other live streams, because we do have live streaming a bunch of spots, to raise your hand or ask a question, because we are having an open discussion if they do want to ask. And while we wait for those questions to come in, please feel free to throw a question up on YouTube here. I want to throw it to Lubna, because Lubna has a very interesting perspective as a systems architect, but also she has very strong communication skills, and for integrating blockchain into a startup that is looking to pivot, into this technology without really knowing a lot about it. Speaking to a systems architect can be very technical and confusing, but having that communication skill obviously is super important. So Lubna, I'd love to hear your opinion on, how should startups that are interested in getting into and pivoting into this technology, go about it?
Well, thank you. I think this the technology is a phenomenal. Distributed ledger technology is a brilliant enabling technology. It is there's also an implementation of, like Bitcoin and other coins is one aspect of it, but there are applications. There's the currency of it, and there's that ability to do. To me, it's whether it's the supply chain and business process optimization and ways to manage the relationships and establish trust, or on the road to trust. It is not security, and it's not a closed thing. If you put something on the chain, doesn't make it secure. Actually, on the contrary, it is. If it's public, it's public. It's the idea of knowing what to put on the chain and what not to put. So for a startup that wants to pivot and move into utilizing the technology, the first thing is to understand why and what they're trying to do, and then understand the differences in the technology and how they may or may not benefit from it. Distributed ledger, blockchain, Hedera hash graph, whichever architecture you use or protocol, it's not an answer to all. It is a component of technology enablement solutions. So the first question would be, what is it that you're actually trying to do? And what is it that you have? And then you can figure out what technologies.
Definitely. Yeah, I guess you really need to figure out what you want to do before you choose the technology in which you will use to do it, right? So, and that really leads me to this audience question from Stanley Marchon, which directly relates to this. And Stanley's question for the panelists is, how will mass adoption work when people speak so much on the technicalities and very little about the product or keeping the model simple? And I think this directly relates to what you were just saying. And I'll start off with Kristiana, because I know she's eager to say something about this.
Okay, I think adoption is my middle name. Okay, and one time I was in a panel. I said that. Anyways, people thought I was talking about adopting children, which is also fantastic. Crossing the Chasm. If you haven't read this book, Crossing the Chasm, I speak about it all the time. I wish I can meet the author one day. Okay. It's about the disruption curve, the innovation disruption curve, and it discusses this gap between the market and the disruption that people are trying to solve. And then, so the biggest thing for adoption and for getting these disruptive technologies to people, I think I'd like to start with a story about Puerto Rico. And we were in a hurricane. So specifically now, especially I'm focused on this crisis relief, emergency relief. People came over to Puerto Rico, and they were like, okay, well, we're gonna fix everything with blockchain, mesh networks. And so who asked the Puerto Ricans if they wanted mesh networks or Google Loons, or who asked them? Okay. And thank you, Tesla. Tesla did a beautiful solar park in Vieques. But again, did you ask the Puerto Ricans of Vieques if they wanted a solar park? Did you gather with them? Did you show them, hey, this is going to give you sustained electricity for a long term? This is important. No. You didn't do that. You came, you just took over some land, you put in your panels, and you made a nice PR hurrah. And then a few months later, wild horses are stomping over the panels and just breaking everything, right? The reason they're doing that is, if you know Puerto Rican, or whether it's a New Yorican, or if you know any, Caribbean blooded people, okay, yes, you know it, girl. You know that they will fight tooth and nail to protect what's theirs. If the solar panel is what's going to bring them light and ability to cook things in their home, you think they're going to let horses stomp on it? No, they're going to protect it. But they weren't part of the solution. They weren't given a voice in the solution, right? So I think that's, long story short. Yes, it's great that people have these technologies, but it's very important to get the okay and to work on a solution with the people you're solving for.
Yeah, it's when you're solving complex problems, you need It's scientifically proven you need sort of a transdisciplinary team. And in that, you need, within that, you need a representation of the entire ecosystem or the stakeholders that are affected. And without that, and without having, establishing a common language and an alignment on what the goals are and what the objectives or what the even, and framing the problem, which is the most important. Because we can be all thinking that we're trying to get to one place, but if we're, or we're looking at the same problem, but if the framing is not consistent, then we're going to arrive at forks, not at convergence. So it's a challenge, not one that you just throw technology at or throw some PR at or money. It's one that really has you tapping into your human side and the things that were less critical, the soft things, the human aspects. And recently IEEE just released a new standard that Piece 7010, well, now it's Standard 7010, on the practice assessment of the impact of AI and autonomous systems on human well-being and happiness. So I think it's becoming more and more obvious that we cannot develop technologies or solutions or anything in silos or just for the sake of making money. We have to look at it holistically, systemic, which is where that systems thinking and systems view, and looking at the relationships and the impact. So that what my colleagues and I are writing a paper now that we've talked about, the field of effect. And what is its impact? Just like when you drop a rock, a stone in the water, it's not just where you drop it, it's also ripple effect. You call it butterfly effect, you call it whatever you call it. We like the field effect. I have myself going back to playing with magnets and shavings.
Nice.
It's the New York, Puerto Rico thing.
And I would say too, for mass adoption of this technology, it's like mass adoption of what, right? Because not everybody needs a blockchain. A lot of times blockchain is used as a buzzword when you don't really need one. It's kind of just expensive for no reason if it doesn't fit your industry perfectly. But for me, so it's just like mass adoption of what? Like
I absolutely disagree to that myself. I think that it is what we need to come to terms with, and it goes back to what I was talking before with Ashton, is that it's really the technology itself. It is going to become the interconnectivity that occurs. So when we look at systems such as EDI, which are PASS, when you start looking at being able to send information across different organizations and keeping privacy. So we can all say very clearly that the internet does not work for everything. One of the things that somebody called me yesterday and asked me to look at an organization, Pantheon, which is doing a solution around presenting, invoice. And I said to them, oh, that seems like, I was joking and saying, oh, this seems like they're looking to be taken over by probably SAP or Oracle. But in reality, what exists is if you're a small business and you need to pay your invoices, there isn't a flexible way of doing that. And this is what this technology will give. And it is going to be, to me, in 4 to 5, 6 years, really what the back office and what it's going to be like. You're no longer going to have simple databases. You are going to have smart contracts. You are going to have performance contracts. So it is not just about the coin. It's also those performance measures that need to be done in removing the need to double check and you can get better SLA, which then means that there are savings that can be done and you can take your resources and use them to different aspects. It also allows people to be able to live closer to home. You don't need to travel afar to be assured that your goods will be paid the value that it deserves to be paid. So we have to open our mind, and that's the mass adoption. is how do I use technology to further those? And that's what happened with the cell phone. The cell phone allowed for people to be able to communicate further afield. So that's to me where we need to open our minds.
Let me say you're absolutely right. The distributed ledger technologies are here to stay, and they're an enormously impactful cornerstone of future economy and future society. Absolutely. There is no question about that. You know, it's here to stay. There is no question that cryptocurrency is the way to be. And anyway, I mean, I'm not that I'm in a big rush, because once governments lays their hands on them, and we have to be super careful with how things get adopted and regulated, because then it becomes, you know, where our liberty is what's at question. So we need to be very, very cognizant of how we apply technology and the duality of it. It's always anything that we make, anything can be used for good or for bad, especially when it's a technical innovation, because information and communication technology innovation. Because if you think communication is what we need to exchange, and information, which is whether it's blockchain or AI, it's computational capacity and an exchange. And those are essential to how we interact, how we create, how we evolve. And we have to be super careful with the unintended, so that when we're designing for the field of effect, to be very careful with how we put governance and what we built around it, to make sure that we can, for me, I want to ensure that individuals continue to be autonomous, even just as a unit, where, you know, when today in biology, you know where you begin and end, right here. But today, in reality, we are not just physically here. We're here, but a heck of a lot of us is actually in cybersphere. And if the rest of your organs that are in cybersphere, if you will, are compromised, the quality of your physical life is completely trashed. Imagine if your identity is compromised, or your bank is messed up. Or let's say, I tell people, imagine if a randomizer software goes and everybody's records are all mixed. And now you have my bank account, which would be really sad for you, know, and someone else's criminal record, and your smart house doesn't know it's you. So we have to become more aware. So for identity, for example, I think there's a lot of enormous uses for distributed ledger technologies, and there will be more and more innovations of protocols of how we do that. And I think distributed organizations, distributed anonymous organizations, AI is enormous implications, data visualization, immersive technologies, you know, when we pile them together and like pieces in a Lego block piece, or like colors in your paint palette. There are lots of things we can do with them. We just have to be very cognizant of the impact on our liberty. And with COVID, I have to say, there are many ways to do the tracking without giving away without giving away your privacy. So anybody that tells you you're choosing your own self over the wellness of society is manipulating you, because you can contribute to the tracking without becoming conditioned to strict compliance.
Wow. Well, very well said, Lubna. And this has been such a great conversation, and it's getting so exciting. And, you know, this is the end of the first half of the talk show. And this is where it gets super exciting, because the second half is investing in the digital economy for beginners as well. So we're really going to break it down. And we will. So thank you so much for the first half. You know, round of applause for all of the great discussion from these ladies. Thank you so much. And we're going to take a quick second for Christiana to play a video, talk about our community partners, and then we'll dive deep, and make sure we stay here, panelists stay here, because this is going to be a great discussion. But we're going to take a quick segue for Christiana, and then we'll be right back. So thank you so much.
You're muted. You're muted, Christiana.
Hey, mute no longer. Okay, guys, just we are now switching to the beginner hour, and just wanted to share just in the transition, please relieve yourself, whatever you need to do, and get some coffee. And we're also going to be inviting anyone who's special guests, special appearances, going to be invited up to chat with us. So I'm going to just show a quick video.
Do you feel like going to the theater, your local cafe, attending a concert? Not possible. There's a second pandemic, social distancing. Right now, millions are struggling with anxiety, depression, and loneliness. How can you share a virtual hug? Give hope to survive this pandemic. The key? An interactive bridge connecting humans. Enter GiveOn Live, the home of live stream. Our mission is to gather live stream in one place, a portal that fosters connection between humans. Thomas, a hip-hop dancer, was laid off from a Brooklyn studio after New York City lockdown. Thomas posts lessons online, earning by streaming on YouTube. His dream, 100,000 subscribers. He's just as good as Usher, but nobody knows. Tara's an exchange student, quarantined in Milano. She's already binged her Netflix shows. Hip-hop dancing is the one thing she loves. Videos aren't the same as dancing with friends. She's given up. Then she finds GiveOn Live. Next day, Thomas in her inbox. Brooklyn moves. Thomas is a GiveOn Live creator now, receiving donations from more and more fans. Tara joins his dance live, practicing and chatting virtually with new friends. She finds more interactive live stream and adds to her calendar. Great, Tara, we'll remind you when to get live. Live streaming is already the new norm, and we've given it a new home. Zoom jumped 200 million daily users. Imagine what that means for our potential revenue. Stay tuned for premium subscriptions. Behind closed doors, we are still social beings. We need to experience each other. Sharing our culture is what makes us human. GiveOn Live tech superheroes bring positive engagement into every home. Stand apart together, your live stream guide.
Yay. Okay. Thank you so much, guys. Ooh,
Love it. Just love it, I have to say.
awesome. Yay. Let me see. I don't know why. So I just wanted to do a quick note, and you can't see me. Okay, I just wanted to make a really quick note. I don't know why I'm invisible. Can anybody see me? Can you guys see me? No, can't see me. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to let you see the bear instead. So guys, so yeah, I just wanted to make a quick note about the mission and GiveOn Live, the platform. It is a public live stream library. So what we're doing is we are gathering information more than anything else. Information on, there we go. Can you see me? Oh, there. Oh, it was backwards. Gotcha, guys. Gotcha. Woo. Okay. The reality is here. Okay. So basically, GiveOn Live. I'm going to go right in the light. We're gathering information about positive, meaningful content. So this next hour, particularly the beginner hour, this is all for Thomas and Tara. For Thomas, the creator. For Tara, a student quarantined. This is the whole point of the platform, why we made this platform. And we're doing shows like these, or we are promoting other creators making shows like these so that we can really show these new people that are now somewhat forced into the digital economy to get ahead and to get happening on the web. So with no further ado, we are going to get to the next show. If Ashton's ready, we will. Okay, yeah. So just like we are revamping everything. Stanley, you're welcome to come join us if you so choose. But let me let Ashton, our handsome host, introduce this next section.
All right. Thank you so much. Other panelists, if you guys are back yet, I know we take a quick coffee there. Hope you got your drinks. Turn your cameras on if you're back, and let's get into the discussion about investing in the digital economy. And, just as a pretense, it's not investment advice and we're not financial advisors, but it is very educational and informational. And there's lots of personal experience that all of these speakers can go through because they've all been in the blockchain industry for the most part for many years, myself included. Got involved with Bitcoin when it was about $200, and have been running a media company looking to promote startups that are integrating blockchain for the last 5 years. So I guess, one of the first questions that I want to throw to Kristiana is, yeah, right. You're on the spot here. I know you've been in blockchain for a long time. We're both blockchain speakers. There's so many things going on in the blockchain industry in terms of crypto news, learning about it. And one of the things that often people in the blockchain industry say to me is, if you aren't struggling to keep up with the information, then you're not looking hard enough because there's just so much going on. And with so much going on, how do you start? How do you start when there's so much, like every day there's news going on, but now there's 10 years of, backstory that you have to get through just to get up to date, and everything moves so quickly. Do you have any guidance at all on, if people are looking to start investing in the digital economy, and this is for people that are invested in the traditional economy as well, people that just like this technology, but they're not really investors, right? As you said, Thomas and Tara, they're not really familiar with how the stock market works and investing, but they see that this technology has potential. Do you have any guidance on where do you start to learn the basics on how to get to the next step?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it is important to note, everyone has to find their path and their journey to this information. And I'm a big believer in, yes, giving people the tools, leading them into the right direction, but everyone needs to take it into their own hands, the education that they seek to attain. That being said, one of my best friends in the space, her name is Lauren. And in the beginning, especially, she opened my eyes to Bitcoin and how it wasn't just, I always thought it was just a stock. I was working with startups back in 2014 in Korea. And it was like, okay, here's another peer-to-peer play. But I didn't realize the power. And then she mentioned, well, it's, people who could never get a bank before can now be their own bank, and they can send money. And look at what's happening in Africa with points, mobile points being used as an exchange of value. And I'm just like, wait. You mean this is impactful into society, and this is more than just speculation and traders? And then she's like, yes, and so that started me on the path. But I was very much, as much as I've always been kind of on the strange, weird side of things, or just out there, but always kind of been kind of out there, I still was very trained with East Coast, like go to college, you're on this path, become this. I've always was kind of trained that. So when learning a new thing, I reverted back to that. Okay, well, is there a course that I can take on blockchain? Or maybe I should get this course, or do you think I should get a certificate, Lauren? So and that I was mocking myself. Okay, that's my bias. So what I realized in the end was that I needed to just get in it, and I'm not saying financially again, and we're not speaking, this whole section is not about financial advice, as Ashton mentioned. Again, it's but in it, in the sense of play with it, get a taste, and for example, one of our community partners is Edge Wallet, and Edge Wallet used to be Airbits. And if I can tell you a story, that my best friend in the space now, she had that conversation with me while I was her waitress on my side job. And she asked me if she could tip me with Bitcoin. And that was back where this wallet that I'm talking about, Edge Wallet, back when Edge Wallet used to be called Airbits. So she tips me with this, and she's like, you know what? this is really cool thing, Bitcoin. Let me introduce you to it if you want. And I was explaining to her some of the entrepreneurial things I was doing. She's like, well, it seems like you could maybe be interested in learning more. She added me to the Crypto Goddesses group on Facebook. And so she showed me, she gave me Bitcoin in an instant. I had it in my pocket, right? In my phone. And then she gave me an avenue where I could learn and discover on my own. So that I feel is the first step. And Erica, I can't see you. And I do believe it is the best step. So what we do with the show and in general is we always, let's start out with one wallet that's easy for you to download and you can explore. Oftentimes, our partners like Edge Wallet, sometimes they'll let us do campaigns and give away some Bitcoin or Dash or what's easy, which is usually Bitcoin Cash. And then let the person enter their path to discovery.
Yeah, that's a great segue. And you know what? Edge Wallet, Airbits has been around for a long time. It's trusted. Funny enough, usually you have a person that, you sort of trust that maybe they're, a smarter person, and they tell you that there's value in this technology, right? And for me, that was my father. My father, who's been a tech founder since the .com days, was in cryptocurrencies before me, introduced me to it. And he's been teaching me about tech for my whole life. So I've been a tech person, but when he said, we need to really get into this, he actually interviewed Airbit's founder, Paul, back in 2014, when we just got into it. And now the platform has grown so much. But one of the things that I've noticed about it's great when you have somebody that you can trust, that can explain things to you. If you have any questions, you can talk to them, right? Somebody that either in your community or a friend or family. But for some, I have this friend who's a really smart guy, but he's also a traditional investor. And there's this paradigm shift between traditional assets and what creates the underlying value of stocks and bonds in the stock market versus Bitcoin as a new asset class. And many traditional investors, they have a hard time seeing the difference in the value, because they say, well, Bitcoin doesn't have a company that's generating profits, or there's not really shareholders of Bitcoin. So how is it increasing in price? Is it just speculation, or I don't understand how the network provides value. And it's funny because you can explain that, okay, well, you can send $100 million across the world in less than 10 minutes and pay like $1 fee. There's obvious value in that, but how does that determine the Bitcoin price? And is that really the thing that's giving Bitcoin value? And I'd love to hear some of the panelists' thoughts on this, because obviously most of us see the value in it, but explaining that to somebody who is a traditional investor and they're not used to this new asset class, they think that it's something that's never seen before. So you really just have faith that this new type of value creation is going to continue.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to that because here's the thing. I'm somebody who is actually relatively new to this cryptocurrency and blockchain. It's kind of funny because when I was overseas in Beijing, somebody was offering me Bitcoin or something in 2010, and I just thought it was so weird. I didn't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
But now the last laugh. Who has the last laugh? It's them, because I could have got in so early when it was only $100, and so I don't even know what it is right now. I think it's like I don't know how much. It's like, guys, it's just thousands of dollars. But my point is, Ashton, to your point here, the value, understanding the value. Here's the thing. People don't know what the value of any of your product or service or any currency or whatever until it's described in a way that is of use to them. That's the point. So the problem with this then now how do we relay that value? Because the thing is that my eyes didn't open and my ears didn't open really until I saw, now that it's no longer being done, but initial coin offering that was in 2017. I came across these random articles, and although that's totally not done anymore, and the SEC, like Erica spoke to, is going to be chasing you and really, but that use case is what grabbed my attention, because that is something that is relevant to any sort of asset, any sort of capital raising is useful information, is a use case for any potential business. So now the challenge is for people in your industry, because again, I'm very new to this. I'm just on the outside looking in, sitting at the feet of wisdom.
Hey, Lillian, just 1 second, Lillian. Can you come closer to the mic? Some of the audience is saying we can't really hear you. If you can like adjust your mic a little bit, it's a little off the mic.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you for letting me know. Can you hear me now? Is it a little bit better?
Is it better, guys?
I may have to log into another thing. But my point is that
It's a little better.
You just need to be close to it.
Okay, so relaying the value. And I lost my train of thought. But yeah, so basically, yeah, the point is that what are the certain what are the certain use cases for blockchain and cryptocurrency? And you're really spelling that out for people as far as specific pinpointed bullet points is crucial to gain like mass support. That's my point.
I'd love to hear Erica's thoughts on this, because I'm guessing that you were invested in the industry before initial coin offerings became popular, or at least you see other use cases of value besides that. And it seems that there are all these different sub industries that blockchain can apply to, especially in the financial industry, of course, and raising capital can be one of them. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on the underlying value proposition of the technology.
So first, we really need to, I talked to a lot of people about this. I think it's really important for us to separate Bitcoin from blockchain and know that every blockchain runs different. Every single one has its own use case. They all have their own value proposition. Now, if the question is the initial question where it's like, how do I explain this to a traditional investor? If you're talking about a Wall Street, tycoon, traditional investor type of person, right now, the way that I would explain it is a store of value. It has limited supply. When it comes to the economic principles that makes money good money, Bitcoin, is an A+ in every single one of those ways, right? Scarce, divisible, limited supply, like all of the different ways. Now, if they are skeptical of it and they're skeptical of those fundamentals and they're in the United States, then I don't care, because the impact is not for them. We have a good quality of life here. We have relatively stable money. The impact here is for people like, for example, in Venezuela, we have a team in Venezuela at the Blockchain Center, and they do a lot of stuff for our clients there. Venezuela, Caracas is very adopted when it comes to Bitcoin, because it's not even that they're trying to get rich. It's that they don't want to get poor. Their money is devaluing more than Bitcoin is when Bitcoin has these crazy swings sometimes. So, sometimes Americans, they just will never understand the value prop, and it's because we come from a very privileged perspective here. So just from an investor standpoint, I think that it's a store of value, which, don't invest more than you're willing to lose. Obviously, it's still a speculative market, just like any other market. Like Lillian said, these people are valuing a product. It's still just projections, like nothing is set in stone. But with Bitcoin, what's interesting is that you have a global marketplace. A story I like to tell people is, 1 year, the Turkish lira dropped 27% in a year. And one day in particular, it dropped like 7%, right? And then during that time, the price of Bitcoin in that country went up to all-time highs. And it's just because it's a form of money that's outside of the control of individual governments. And the thing about money that's under the control of governments is that it's under the control of individual people that you can point at, and people can, not saying they're all corrupt, but when you have an individual that you can corrupt, then you have a person you can point to and say, hey, if I pay this person off, then maybe I can get my way. So from an investor standpoint, people in the United States just might not understand sometimes. And that's okay with me, because it's the 60% of the world that doesn't have access to banks that we want to be able to participate in the global money system. Now, the value prop when it comes to blockchain and individual blockchain projects, I would say value those the same way that you would value any other company. How good is this database, right? Because the reason why I'm so for Bitcoin versus all these other blockchains is because the real thing that makes Bitcoin powerful is the fact that it's decentralized. There is no leader in charge. If you guys know Satoshi Nakamoto, the person who created it, he is, I mean, nobody knows who he is. It's almost like this immaculate conception, you know, like nobody knows who he is. There's no CEO of Bitcoin that you can come to and say, you know, ruin his reputation or anything, or kill, whatever, right? It's open source software. So because of that, when you have an individual project that is using blockchain, first of all, does it fit? Second of all, if it's not decentralized, do you really need a blockchain at that point, right? Because then what you have, and this is why education is so important, what you have at that point is you have a database that you say is immutable, that you say nobody can change this, that you say is, you know, like all of these great benefits that Bitcoin offers and blockchains can offer, but they don't, because, like, for example, EOS, right? Kristiana, you were talking about Puerto Rico. EOS is huge. Brock Pierce out of Puerto Rico, and for him, his consensus mechanism, how you get information posted onto the blockchain, there's 21 block producers, right? So let's say that you convince 12 of those people to change a little bit of information. Let's say you have land titles on the blockchain, a great innovation on blockchain, and I really hope that it happens. But let's say you get 12 of those people to say, I don't like this person, let's change that they never own this land. That's 12 people to convince. I mean, governments are bigger than that. I mean, are smaller. I mean, you need less people to change what everybody is going to think is an official record. So I think that, you know, blockchain does have a great innovation, but we need to make sure that we're clear that all of the benefits of blockchain are not on every single blockchain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so much different technology, which is great for competition wise to have, you know, I think it pushes the industry forward to have these different blockchains. And just to touch on the other things that you said about, you know, as a currency in a lot of these emerging economies, yeah, it definitely helps emerging economies more so than, you know, America, who's already has a financial system that, you know, you could say is developed and working for the most part.
Yeah, and if you, sorry, well, if you, I mean, let's look at some of the people who have come out publicly and said that just specifically Bitcoin. Right now, to me, Bitcoin is the only, like, tested for 10 years, proven I actually have a track record of working in the space for a long time. All of these other companies, I mean, they will succeed. I'm sure many of them will, but right now, the only real test case we have is Bitcoin. You look at the people that have come out against it, right? Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan and Chase. JP Morgan and Chase is the first large bank in the United States to make up their own cryptocurrency, to do interbank settlements. You know, it's not like they're giving it out to the public. And then, I mean, you know, you just look at people in government who have talked about Bitcoin before, and now they're proposing a digital dollar, right? So it's like when Libra came out, Libra is Facebook's currency. So Facebook banned ads on cryptocurrency on Facebook for, I don't know, maybe a year or so. And then right before Libra came out, maybe a month or two, they unbanned ads for cryptocurrency on Facebook, and then they came out with Libra, right? And so it's just like, obviously this technology is working, it's proven, specifically the transfer of value aspect, but do you trust the people that are inputting information into the system? And what blockchain is supposed to get rid of is that idea of trust. You don't need to trust, just verify, right? But when you have, let's say, 21 people as an example of EOS inputting information in, then you do actually still have to trust. So just, you know, we really have to be clear that, you know, there are benefits, but not all blockchains have these benefits.
Definitely. And I love Lubna's opinion on this, because being a systems architect, I'm sure she's familiar with the different types of blockchains, and it can be confusing for people that aren't, you know, invested into the space yet, that, you know, the Bitcoin blockchain runs differently than the Ethereum blockchain, that, you know, including the blockchain itself and the coins have different, the coins have different supply, different economy. The blockchains have different amount of people that are verifying it. Right now, they're both running a proof of work, but that will soon change, and that will change the way that the whole system is run as well. So, you know, in terms of currencies, Lubna, could you talk about the currencies on top of some of the major blockchains and the underlying value proposition that you see?
I think Erica probably, or Christiane, would be more capable of talking about it in terms of, specifically in terms of currencies. What I want to say is, in tokenization, or when you're creating a token for use on your in your service or your or on your app or platform, the design of it and it's, at the end of the day, it's about stored, a currency is about a stored value or a perceived value in something, whether it's in the dollar or it used to have gold, as we said, and now it has a promise. So it is about the perceived value, and it's about and what makes crypto more interesting is because at least you have the integrity of the technology behind it, and it is open. But then the value that is stored and how you create value with your token, it's the thing is where the engagement and where you thinking about your whole ecosystem and how in exchanging and in transacting are you creating and storing value. For example, we are one of the things I'm involved in for during COVID is with a few colleagues of mine and I are working on creating we're starting a DV Watch, which is an organization to get volunteers engaged to help raise awareness and change policy and impact even technology around domestic violence, which also relates to human trafficking. And now there are we are designing ways to engage our volunteers, keeping them safe, yet engaging them and creating value to them in the process. How for that itself can be as they bank their time, as they volunteer their time, as they engage in different ways. That in itself can be stored, can be tokenized, and there would be value exchange, because for how much they're contributing or how much they're raising, they can their own, there could be value that gets created in exchange, so that they can then exchange it outside of the network or within the network for something else that they can bring in. So if somebody values the cause, they can then support and they can engage accordingly. I'm not sure, I know what didn't exactly say, maybe Erica can help me out, but my point is if you are thinking about the value, the token is a vehicle to exchange that, to pass that around and to be able to track it well.
Definitely. And
I love that.
what Lillian, I'd love to hear,
we all have opinions on this.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your outsider, more on the beginner side of crypto and on what you think.
Looks like you're muted, Lillian.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
No, she's away from it.
Oh, we can't hear you too well.
Can you hear me?
It's kind of.
Not really. Okay, I'm gonna jump on another Zoom, like on another device, so maybe that's gonna be better.
You're better now. It's your position.
It's like in and out, huh? So yes. So I was saying, what Lubna said, absolutely. Can you guys hear me? It's about that value proposition, and I think that I don't know too much about the whole industry, blockchain and Bitcoin, but from what I've seen on the outside, I think there could be a better job of these key people sharing that value prop with people outside. I think that there's a disconnect. I'm just saying that as an observer and as an outsider, but the use cases, and it's not just like for example, somebody who wants to learn Spanish in my business or Chinese in my business, the use cases of that are so many. It can be they want to able to speak or they want to be able to speak that language with their fiance or spouse. It could be they want to study abroad in Ecuador. It could be they want to go to Colombia. They want to go to Madrid. Yes, Cristiana. They want to go to, or it could be they want to do business in Mexico, right? It could be that they want to read. It could be their lifelong dream is to read El Alchemista, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho in Spanish.
Mhm.
My point is there could be
Nice book.
25 different reasons. In other words, the metaphor here is 25,000 different use cases, but the end solution is the same, the Spanish class.
Mhm.
My point is that I think that, or maybe it's just I have not come across the use cases of the many use cases of Bitcoin, of cryptocurrency, da, 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 da. I just don't, I've never seen a bullet point list of all of the reasons people use it.
Yeah, that's
And I
great.
think that needs to be
Okay.
done. And whatever business is able to do that and make it completely relevant, that business
Well-
could be a multi-billion, like really.
Well, let me ask you something, Lillian. Let me ask you something real quick. Okay, you said 25 reasons, right? But you, as someone with limited resources and someone who needs to book classes, do you market to all those 25 reasons of needing to take a Spanish class? Or do you identify the top 3 that is the most relevant to your service? For
Okay.
example, how do you market your service? So that back now, like let's be analogous to, okay, no, so now you have a service, let's say, just like
Well,
Bitcoin has
I
a
mean,
service.
so that's a different conversation, but yes. So you address the pain points of all of these people. The pain points can be very similar.
Painful.
They can't speak the language or they're not able to communicate with people of that country.
Yeah, I hear you.
So my point is, I'm just curious about, but yeah, that's the thing, but they all come for the same solution. So if you wanted to, you could create different websites at some point because you have different segments of your market.
Yeah.
Initially, but I'm just trying to identify, I'm just trying to learn about what you guys are talking about today. Like, that is the disconnect, the value prop. Like, what are the
Yeah.
pain points of people? Why are people coming to Bitcoin? What are the reasons?
Yeah, I mean, I was just trying to note to the fact that I think it would be better for the messaging and the narrative of what Bitcoin is if at least there were some people focusing on the people who need Bitcoin the most. So if you look at this massive market of human beings, if you cannot perceive your need, you won't reach for a solution that's convoluted and hard to explain. Why would you? I don't know my need. Lubna, what do you want to say? I just think it's a little bit.
Like, I'm thinking with, I mean, we live in a world of, we are conditioned, because we live in a world of abundance, actually, but we're conditioned
Sure,
to be in
sure,
scarcity. And because of that, a lot of the issues that we have today are on the social side, but forgetting that, but money, when it used to be, and correct me, you guys, if I'm wrong, when it used to be backed by gold, which was perceived to be, you know, a finite and resource, which it is, if you think about it. But when money went to being fiat, which is backed by like a promise, you see how meaningful that promise. They can just print money whenever they want, and it's become nearly meaningless. So while we still have this relationship with money that is as though it's anchored and safe with traditional money, we have not, I lost my train of thought now, but we have not transitioned. And maybe what we're trying to do, what we're saying here is, how do you transition the understanding to how can you relate with cryptocurrency? So with Bitcoin has a limited number. So it's a certain number of coins, and that's it. There could never be more. There could never be, well, they could be somewhere stolen, but there's a certain set, and you can divide them, and then there's that value. So you're exchanging value, just like you used to exchange value with dollars backed by money. It has a stored value. But there's another kind of tokens we're talking about, is when a company creates tokens that you can exchange on, just like, in one way to think of it also is these like rewards. They can be affinity, loyalty, interest. Like, you can create a token that if you have a marketplace, that the only certain things you can only get with that token. So you can only buy them if you had certain tokens or certain kind of a token. So you can create different ways of exchanging value within a community. It's also very useful for that he said, she said, I say, because it's a really distributed ledger. There's a linked list, so it's entry after entry. So you have to unravel the whole thing to say, for you all of a sudden to say, no, that's not what I said, or that's not what I agreed to. So once it's put in the chain, it stays. And that's the really useful thing. But I think Erica can probably tell a lot more to help. But I think as an industry, we probably do have to crystallize or boil it down to like the so what of it.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we so excited about it?
I definitely agree, Lubna. And, for people, and, I think Lillian can agree to this, is that when you aren't really invested into the information in the industry, Bitcoin by itself is like, you sort of have to get past that barrier to get to the value propositions of, Ethereum, and then all of these other thousands of coins that have, you can have specific properties, or some of them are more speculative, but really the gateway, the gateway drug to this whole thing is Bitcoin. And I guess part of the reason that people have a hard time understanding Bitcoin is because you need to understand it relative to the American dollar, relative to how the traditional financial system works, because they work differently. And you can't really understand the value proposition of Bitcoin if you don't understand the value proposition of, traditional money, because they're different. And that's how you see the benefits and the cost of each one. So if we could stick to Bitcoin for a little bit, I think part of understanding the value proposition behind this economy is the fact that Bitcoin is different than the traditional economy by the way that it's governed, but also by the economics of it, managing inflation, the money supply, and also the way that it's that you transfer value, and the way that it's created, as opposed to printing money at a mint, it's created through a source code, and it can't really be manipulated as much, and I want to play a little game here where, I have a few buzzwords that are important to understand to fully understand the difference between Bitcoin and the US dollar. So if I could throw out the first one, I guess would be, inflation/deflation. There's a major difference between traditional money and Bitcoin that is very important to know if you're going to understand this economy. So I'm not sure, is Jean-Vieve, are you still in the call with us here? I know your video's off, but I'd love to hear from you.
Yes. Yeah.
Could you think
I'm
you
back.
could tackle this? Can you tackle this one?
What was you're talking about the difference between inflation and deflation?
Yeah, and between the American dollar, traditional currencies, and between cryptocurrencies.
The cryptocurrency does not have any controlling body against it. It's really more of a sentiment based. So therefore, unlike regular currencies, whereby there is going to be economic events that cause the government to react, so either contracting of the economy or expansion of the economy, they can play with the supply. Because the supply is also limited in the Bitcoin, you can't just flood it and expand it. So which are really some of the basic economics in there as to why the fundamental difference is no control and also limited supply. So therefore you can't print more in order to create these inflationary or deflationary events.
Erica, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so sorry, somebody called me and I had to take it earlier, but I did want to say something really quick about the dollar value attached to coins. What's interesting is when you're using a lot of people to verify information. John Nash created this, well, he didn't create it, but he wrote a paper about this thing called game theory, which essentially is, all of the participants in a system, if they are incentivized to act properly and in the best benefit of that system, then they will do so, right? And if someone is a bad actor and they want to do something negative against the system, then the reward is way less than if they were just to continue to positively work towards the system. So which is why you see a lot of these coins have a dollar value attached to it. Although, you know, it just kind of like, it keeps the network honest. Now, when you talk about Bitcoin like versus Ethereum is not trying to be sound money. You know, they're not trying to say, I have an economic incentive and I want to be good money for everyone in the world. Ethereum is a smart contract platform. It is a developer tool. It is a better way for businesses to be able to do business with each other, but they're not trying to be sound money like Bitcoin. So now to your second question about inflationary versus deflationary when it comes to the US government and when it comes to Bitcoin, Bitcoin is, you know, it is a internet version of gold. So gold has been in a store of value for, you know, 2,000, 3,000 years, probably longer, right? And the reason why gold was so important and people liked it was because there was a limited supply. If you wanted to find more gold, there was work that you had to do in order to get more gold. And work is value, right? I mean, even if you look at the scientific description of work, it involves action, it involves movement, it involves like, I could probably look up the exact formula, but it involves you actually adding something to the economy. And that's valuable because then I mean, first of all, when people have work, they feel like they have purpose. And second of all, you can't have people just get things for free all the time because there's no incentives. People get lazy naturally, you know? So in the Bitcoin economy, what you have is something like gold where there is a limited supply. In order to add more Bitcoins to the economy, you have to do work, proof of work, which is these miners, you know, solving complex math problems. Now, what's interesting in this case is that whereas gold is something that, you know, we don't really know how much gold is out there, how much will be mined. You know, Elon Musk could make it to Mars and he could inflate the gold supply because he finds a bunch of gold on Mars, you know? So we don't really know that. But with Bitcoin, because it's open source software code that anyone in the world can verify, we know that there is going to be only 21 million Bitcoins ever in existence. And we also know that this many Bitcoins is being added every 10 minutes. I think right now it's 6 Bitcoins. Every 10 minutes, a miner will win, right? So it's very, very controlled. Now, I'll go into inflationary versus deflationary in a second. But now with the US government, we used to be backed by gold. We got off of the gold standard. I'm going to say officially, I don't remember this. I always talk about this stuff. It's the quarantine that's getting to me, but we got off the gold standard and it wasn't right away. You know, things don't ever happen right away. We were like 75% pegged to gold, the dollar was, and then we became 50%, and then we became 25%. And then in 1971, we are now 0% pegged to the gold. So what happens is that governments can print money. They can also tax you. And then you don't know where this money goes. So what that means is that the dollars that you have, it's not that they are worth less because you can buy less things with them. I mean, everyone on this call probably knows $100 goes by really quick nowadays, you know? And so anyways, now to get to deflationary versus inflationary. Bitcoin is naturally deflationary because you know there will only ever be 21 million coins in existence. However, and you think of it as the denominator, right? This is the denominator number. There will only ever be 21 million. Now, sometimes people lose their coins, they lose their private keys, and so those coins are essentially burned and they cannot be used again, meaning that the denominator gets smaller, meaning that if your numerator on top stays the same, then your value actually increases. Now, in retrospect, we have the dollar, which let's say you have $1,000 and your denominator starts off at, 2,000. Your value is half. Let's say it goes to 3,000, then your value becomes a third, right? And so you can just think about it in the terms of math where it's like deflationary, your denominator is getting smaller, and then inflationary, your denominator is getting larger. And what's really messed up right now is that, they're printing, I think $125 billion a day.
Yep.
So it's like, it's a little ridiculous. And most people don't even know this. And so our purchasing power is significantly lost. And that does not just do it for the money that's being supplied and for, what you can buy with your money. It also affects like the way that we spend. If you know that your money, it's called high time preference, right? In economics. If you know that the money that you spend is going to decrease, then you're going to spend it all quickly because it's losing value. But then when you have money that you know is holding value, like for example, if people own Bitcoin, this is why they're called hodlers and they don't spend it, is because they have a high time preference. They know that over time their money is going to gain in value. So they're really frugal, right? So it really has a lot to play. I mean, economics has a lot to play with human nature.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think
Ooh.
that disconnect between, having a $10 bill and seeing, oh, it's $10, and, it's not gonna all of a sudden wake up and it changes to $9. But theoretically, that's exactly what's happening. When more money is created, then if the value of the total supply of the money is the same, because you really just printed more, then each is sort of worth less, even though on the paper it says it's worth the same.
Yeah,
So
I mean, yes, just real quick. I mean, we see two stories in countries where this has already happened before in our lifetime, Zimbabwe,
Yeah.
they printed $10 trillion bills. That same year, they printed, I think, $100 trillion or $100 billion bills, So it's like, we go from inflation to hyperinflation, which is technically, I think, when your money increases by 50% or more a year, or the value of it, decreases by 50% or more a year. Countries will go from inflation to hyperinflation very, very quickly. Normally it's within a year. When you look at Venezuela, I mean, the Venezuelans that I work with, they tell me stories, I'm sitting at a bar, or like, I want to buy food. One day, the food costs $5 for me to get a taquito or whatever. The next day, that same taquito costs $10. The next day it costs 15, and so it's like very, very quickly the prices are raising. And in America, I'm going to be honest, it's like, we do have inflation here, but it's very, very sneaky. Like, anybody ever open a bag of chips and it's like, whoa, there's like 5 chips in here, right? And like, the price stayed the same, but maybe the quantity got smaller. You see like smaller like cans of Coke, right? And it's very sneaky how inflation first happens. But I think that you can't continue to print money and think that it's sustainable, because it's not.
And that's what's really, really scary right now about what's happening, because now that we are in this lockdown, and people are making, a lot of people are making a lot, and it's a lot of the independent workers and what have you that are making a lot less money. So now what's happening is what they're creating, what it seems like what's being engineered in a way is, and I'm not saying it is or it isn't, that the money that you have in your pocket is worth that much less, and you're making that much less. So you have a lot less of it, and it buys you a lot less. So you still have $100, but now what you used to pay $50 for, you paid $100. What was a penny is now 10 cents, and all of a sudden, you're walking out of the supermarket with nothing, and you're paying a lot. So
can I share my screen really fast?
Yeah.
Your children and your grandchildren have to pay the bill in the end.
Exactly. That's not fair. Can I share my screen really fast, just because we're talking about this topic?
Yes, ma'am. Take it away.
Cool.
Like, we have to create a new economy where we're not
Thank
rather
you,
than vertical accumulation.
Yeah, I just want to share that this is one of my favorite pictures to show people. I always show people this, but
Wow.
1913, the Federal, this is a great picture,
Dude.
The Federal Reserve was created. And this is like a slide that I have in a movie that in a video that I just made. Federal Reserve was created in 1913. Also, that same year, the income tax was created. Okay. So just things. And then we slowly came off the gold standard, and now your dollar, I mean, you see it when you look at like old menus. Used to be like a burger for 50 cents or a burger for $1.50. And now it's like, you can't even get those deals at McDonald's anymore. So since we got off the gold standard, since we were no longer pegged to gold, I think in 1933, Nixon actually took everyone's gold. He made it illegal to own bullion, took everyone's gold away. Yeah. And then now it's like, I don't know, it's a crazy system. But the point of this is to show that, people in power, it's not necessarily that they're trying to do something bad, but people do not know all. They do not, I mean, they could have been trying to save the economy or whatever, which is what they're going to say that they are trying to do now, is save the economy. And they probably are actually trying to do that. But in the long run, it doesn't really help, because if you look at these numbers here,
It's like,
Yeah, I mean, it's like pension plan debt. If you guys don't know, like,
financial management by obscurity, just like security used to be by obscurity. And we have to stop counting on people's ignorance. And that's what it is. We complicate things and then we count on people's ignorance so that we can stretch it and, you know, and we need to change it. And now with for me, what is exciting about having blockchain or Bitcoin is the fact that now we have a new way of exchanging that doesn't have that hierarchical thing that we have ourselves. We have filed ourselves into C structure so that we can be more controlled. It was to streamline, but now it's just for control, and it doesn't really work. And we have means now through connectedness and through distributed technologies and such to take sort of more responsibility for ourselves and to start creating a different way of economic exchange.
yeah,
And
that's a really good point. You know, they profit off of people's ignorance. It's like, oh, nobody knows that this is happening right now. Let me just continue to do it.
do you know what is these banks, you know, what is their biggest revenue? One of the biggest revenue sources for our commercial banks?
Probably fractional reserve lending, because they don't have to do anything. They just take people's money and then they re-lend it back out, even though it doesn't exist.
And overdrafts, fees.
Fees.
Okay, for you know, so it's all a system exploiting really the poor.
Right.
The poor. You know, it really pisses me off. So don't get me started. Like, why is it that Chase, JP Morgan,
Get started.
You know, private client, as a private client, if you have whatever money at Chase, you get a culture card, so you can go to museums for free. What crock of shit, excuse me. But really,
yeah, you get like a 0% interest rate when you get a loan.
That shit should be given to the people that can't afford to go to the museums. The people that money should go to maybe the fees that you're charging people that are that can barely make a living, that are now getting poorer, and the divide is getting worse. So we have to be very careful that we use the technology to elevate humanity and to get us out of scarcity to abundance, out of fear to satisfaction. Dude, you know, life is beautiful. Look at the background.
Beautiful, yes.
Okay, guys.
Come on, people.
Yes, come on, people. Come on, people.
Yes, this is amazing. Again, I'm just learning so much from you guys, the whole team, the whole crew here. And again, somebody who's just coming brand spanking new. I'm a newborn baby to this, guys. Just hearing from what you guys said, there's two things that popped into my head for real value proposition, use case, whatever you want to call it. And the one was hearing it equated to gold. Okay, that really digital gold. I think that's what I heard. That was like something, and that was it just sounded sweet. Okay?
It is.
See, these are the things. It's marketing too. You got to make it. And then another thing, as far as the non-governance of it, I know you guys aren't tax experts, but I think this could be the hidden use case that I have been unaware of for the past several years. And if you're not able to speak to the tax implications of trading Bitcoin or holding on to it, could you please refer me to a resource that does speak about how taxes are or not applied to Bitcoin?
I have a great tax guy. He does crypto taxes for me, but he's really good. They actually called it a commodity initially, but now it's very, very strange. There's really no regulatory clarity on it, but it's kind of a commodity. So every time you sell is a taxable event.
Yeah, I'm happy to share some tax opportunities, different people that can answer your questions, Lillian. Definitely, we'll be adding those to the comments of the video, so you can get and then they usually have some kind of panel. Yeah, I mean, all of us are in different places. You know, we have Canada, we have Europe, we have United States, right? So it's all different. But if we're mentioning taxes related to value proposition, I don't even want to get into it.
I want to touch on one thing. You know,
and
Tim,
it's just that as somebody who's brand spanking new learning about this,
brand spanking new. Okay,
it sounds like if there's no taxes on it, then that could have been one of the use cases for people to get on it. So, because if I'm just saying there's non-governance. So
Well,
that was just popping into my head. I'm not
one thing I say,
trying to
Lillian, and
police
this is
anything. I'm
not
just trying to
this is not investment advice, just to make it
Yeah.
clear. One thing I can say is that one thing that someone taught me to do, you know, I'm by far not going to retire anytime soon, right? But it's important for us to think about having retirement accounts and things like that. And what some person told me to start playing. So one of the things with related to taxes as well, you can have a retirement account, at least in the United States. I don't know how it is. So you can have a Roth traditional retirement account or a Rothra, right? And so in there, you can actually get something called GBTC. And that is actually just like any other stock, right? But the cool thing is when you have a stock in your retirement account, you can trade it and do whatever you want. There's no tax situation going to happen with inside your retirement account stocks. So you can play with it, you can sell some, buy some again. Taxes doesn't happen with your with that unless you're taking it out of the account. But so basically, I think it's a safe kind of bet to get some GBTC, which is you know, basically like an ETF, but you can look into it yourself, get it into your retirement account and trade it there and see how you feel, you know, start playing. But yeah, so I mean, Ashton, I'll take it back to you. I know we're closing.
Yeah, we're closing here. There was one thing I wanted to mention about that as well. When I was in Los Angeles, I saw Tim Draper speak, and Tim Draper was speaking about the taxes part. And one of the benefits of the blockchain is all the transactions are on the blockchain. So, you know, you can't really have a transaction that's not recorded on the blockchain. And this actually is going to reinvent accounting altogether with something called triple entry accounting, where no longer is there double entry, but there's that backbone in the middle where the blockchain can sort of coordinate the accounting records of two different companies that were working with each other so that they have the same transaction sitting there on the blockchain. And one of the proposals that Tim Draper is making is to have a tax per transaction, you know, and there's a lot of nitty gritties that would need to be worked out, whether, you know, you're just moving some coins from one of your wallets to another, or if you're dealing with another party. But essentially using the blockchain to just calculate everything automatically instead of going on an honor system that most countries go on, where people just try to self-report and figure it out for themselves, that you can just use the mathematics of the blockchain to calculate everything because every transaction is there, right? So I think we will be seeing upgrades to all of these industries, you know, government, accounting, taxes, healthcare, oil industry, financial industry, every other industry in time here. It's just a matter of working out the kinks and experimenting and figuring out how this technology will properly implement into the world. So there's, you know, and we're still early days, you know, although it seems like we've been, you know, some of us here have been in it for a few years. I can tell you, Lillian, that it is early days.
Yeah, you're not late to the party for sure.
You're not late. Why are you laughing?
So much. It's like when if gold came out and it was 10 years old, right? And you're like, oh, it's already 10 years old. You know, I better not get in it. And then 3,000 years later, right? 3,000 years later, you're like, oh, it's too late. It's like, well, you said that at year 10, but then 2,900 years later, it's still going, right? So this is exactly the same case for Bitcoin.
Can I share my screen again? Do you guys mind?
Yes, go. Do
Yes,
it.
yeah,
wonderful. This has just been such
You're
an
the host,
educational
Erica. You're the host.
experience. Thank you. Yeah.
Here, let me, man, where is it? It should be in this folder, but it's basically just on the point of you're not too late. There is, the world's money supply is about $83 trillion. Gold's market cap right now is about 8 trillion. Bitcoin alone, its market cap is about 50 billion. So still really early. I mean, a lot of people, I don't know if you listen to these at all, Lillian, but like a lot of people who project what the future price will be, including Tim Draper. Tim Draper thinks it'll be like, what, $200,000 a coin? So I did the math, and let's say in order at current prices for Bitcoin to be, for Bitcoin to become $100,000, the market cap of Bitcoin would only have to be 2 trillion, which is only a fourth of gold. And this is a digital gold, right? So yeah, there's a lot of upside still. This is not investment advice, but a lot of people, I mean, this is a safe haven asset for one, for you to store your wealth, but also the upside is really, really there. This is why I have a lot of gold bugs. And these are serious people. They have like gold mines, like they own vaults. They have like, you know, Fort Cobbs and stuff like that. They help people. They just help people go offshore for one. And then for two, you know, just have different asset strategies. And now they're all coming to me like, how do I buy Bitcoin? It's really interesting. So you're not late. I can't find this picture though. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, no problem. Well, we're wrapping up anyway. That's all the time that we had for this segment for Investing in Beginners. Great discussion once again with all our fabulous panelists. For the viewers, if you have any more questions, feel free to leave a comment on the YouTube video and one of us will get back to you, or feel free to connect with us all on LinkedIn. And if you have anything interesting, spark up a discussion with us. We're always interested in speaking to new people and getting more people in the industry. And with that said, thank you so much for all the panelists. It's been a great discussion. And that is all we have for this week's edition of DIGECON Live. Thank you to Kristiana for organizing. And with that said, everybody have a great rest of your week.
Thank you. Super fun. Super smart ladies. Happy to be on here.
Awesome. And thank you to Ashton. Woo! Early. He's waking up early in Vancouver. That's correct, right, Ashton?
Yeah.
Oh, I love Vancouver.
Hey, I'm in Seattle. We're not far from each
Close
other.
by.
Yeah.
Just blocked by the border.
Right.
The non-crossable border.
As soon as I get back to the States,
All right.
Thanks so much, Ashton. Really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you so much, ladies.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
I'll see you next week. Hopefully.
See ya.